was a black girl who thought she was very sure about, I won't say very sure, who thought she at least had some kind of understanding of how she existed as a black girl. And I think she realized that she has to understand more than just the physical space she consumes within her body, and more so of these larger spaces that she fills in, and ask herself if they affect her, and if they do, how, and if they don't, why not. My name's Nastassja Swift, and I'm a sculptural fiber artist. I work primarily with wool using a process called needle felting, which I absolutely love. And I've been doing that for about 6 years now. My work exists in kind of a doll and small scale format, as well as life-size and installation and performative. Tackling usually ideas around ancestry, womanhood, geography and place tied to the body, and specifically Black bodies, and through kind of my way of storytelling. Surprisingly, my background is in painting, and I kind of stumbled across fiber and working with fiber materials outside of a functional standpoint during my undergraduate degree at Virginia Commonwealth University. I started getting really into painting in high school. My work has always been figurative in some form or fashion, and portraits, sometimes of myself, but of women and girls, specifically Black women and girls, was something that I was always drawn to. And I knew that at some point I wanted to get into sculpture. I just wasn't quite sure how to do it, or how to do it in my way. I knew I wasn't interested in certain materials that I think we often find sculpture to exist in, especially when it's figurative. And I think for me, I considered figurative sculpture work kind of stuck in these classical materials. I wasn't interested in ceramics or working with bronze or any kind of metal, and that was kind of the only way I understood figurative sculpture. And then I fell into needle felting. It was a 3D fiber class, kind of intro to fiber class. And the professor at the time had given us a needle, sponge, and some wool, and she gave a quick little demo. And the first thing I felted was this little magenta heart. And I just remember something clicked in my head, and I was like, I can make people now. And that moment was really transformative for me in the way that I was working, because I knew that I was now finally able to work in sculpture and three-dimensionally, which was something that I kind of told myself I couldn't do. And these dolls, the first dolls that I've made, there were 8 of them. They didn't have eyes or fingers. They kind of had like these oven mitt hands. And still to this day, I think they're the most powerful things that I've made with wool, because of what they started and just the way I allowed myself to play in a new material. One of the things I really enjoy about working with wool is the minimal amount of materials and equipment that go into it. I mean, all I need is my yellow car wash sponge and some needles and my wool, and I can be mobile, being able to go wherever I need to and take my process and work with me is amazing. To play with different kinds of wools and understand the fiber spectrum of hair across animal fibers and cellulose fibers is also super intriguing. A part of my work existing as dolls, which to me, these little figurines, they're people, they're sculpture, but they're also dolls, because I think that's that's the first layer that we interact with them. On the surface, that's how they're familiar. And then when you choose to peel back the layers, you get to understand that there's so much more to them than just these things that you may have played with when you were younger. For me, it's kind of no surprise that I am working with dolls because my mother has been collecting black porcelain dolls since she was in her 20s, which is before I was born. So my brother and I had grown up around these porcelain little people, and there was a certain value placed on them with understanding, these weren't meant for play, and these were mommy's dolls. And I had my dolls, which were just as significant because my mother had only purchased me black dolls, and when I was younger, I'm not sure I understood completely why that was my only option, but I think as I got older and understood the value of representation, not only with these dolls that were more of an artifact or an art form that couldn't be handled, as well as representation through the dolls that I was able to play with, I think that subconsciously plays into why I make dolls, why I only make black dolls, and why they're only women. I get questions all the time about how come I don't make male dolls, and there's a number of answers I can give, but I just feel like I don't need to. I'm very happy making different kinds of black women and almost kind of addressing the spectrum of black femininity and womanhood through these figures. It's very important to me that they are never like the other. Each doll is their own individual and has their own hairstyle, their own personality, their own sense of style. They're not all hyper feminine. I don't need them to all be dressed in pink and dresses, and not to say that that's a bad thing. I myself love pink and I love to wear a dress, but I know that is not how all women choose to kind of represent themselves. So I like that many of the dolls are dressed in styles that one may confuse with a male doll, and that could completely be how someone chooses to dress. And I want to honor that in a way of not denying their womanhood because of their clothes. And also just knowing that these dolls, I feel like, look more like me and my family and friends than Barbie or Bratz ever could. They have lips like mine and nose like my mother's and hair in the styles that I used to grow up wearing. So the dolls represent so much of me and my family and black women that I know and love, and I think that will always be a part of them and plays a huge role in their importance, not only to me, but just them existing in the world. I started D for Dolls in August of 2016, which is my small business, especially for my little felted ladies. And I think I just got to a point where I realized I really wanted the dolls to have be their own entity and have their own platform outside of myself as an artist and the kind of work that I wanted to make as Nastassja Swift, and have the dolls be their own thing, even though that I was their maker. And it's been a wonderful ride understanding myself wearing that hat. It's very much a retail business hat, separate than I think the artist's business hat that I oftentimes have to wear. Getting to explore pop-ups and markets and getting my dolls or doll products, now that I make brooches and pins and headbands and totes, and the brand has definitely grown and developed into a multitude of things, but figuring out how to get them into shops and galleries, and it's been a learning experience for sure. Workshops have grown out of my work with D for Dolls, which I absolutely love. Being able to teach felting and share my process with people, I think it becomes this really magical thing where people that take my class and they get to learn and work through the process, and then they're like, oh, well, you do this to make that. Like, there's this new sense of appreciation for the work that I do. And I just think that felting is such an awesome process that people surely enjoy, and it doesn't take long for them to kind of really appreciate the meditative aspect of that, but just the joy of working with the materials and understanding where they come from. And through those workshops, I knew that I always wanted to make my own felting kits. And I've been teaching workshops for the past, I'd say 3 years. I've taught in all over Virginia, just about, in Washington, D.C., North Carolina, Michigan, New York, Johannesburg, even during a birthday trip that I took, and in Doha. So I've gotten to share this process across regions in a way. And about a year ago, or a year and a half ago, I wanted to be able to make my own felting kits. And I had no idea how I was going to attempt that, but I knew I didn't want to just put wool in a box or a bag and say, here, buy my kit. I wanted them to feel so much more weighted than that. At that time, I wasn't sure how to go about approaching it. And I'm pretty okay with letting things simmer until they're supposed to be a thing. And then the pandemic this year happened, and we were all forced to quarantine out of safety, and everyone was home. And I figured, well, this is, for many reasons, the perfect time for me to spend some energy on figuring out what these kits could look like, which a needle felting toolbox was birthed from that. Hi there, and welcome. My name's Nastassja Swift, and I'm the owner and artist of D for Dolls. Thank you for purchasing your needle felting toolbox. Today, I'm going to teach you how to draw with wool. So, a needle felting toolbox, I chose that name because I like the idea of a toolbox maybe entering into this masculine realm of equipment and activities, and playing with the idea that fiber in a Western sense is a woman's game, and just kind of blurring those lines and feeling like I, as a female fiber artist or a male fiber artist, could have a felting toolbox. It just felt like this very special name to give it in regards to all these social norms that surround fiber and textile. And the illustration, many ask if the girl is me. I think she embodies me in a way. I feel like maybe I created this imaginary character with thinking of myself, but I wouldn't say that she's exactly me. And interacting with this character who is essentially providing the wool for the kit. And I just really wanted this box to be as beautiful on the outside as I wanted it to be functional on the inside. The toolbox comes with 20 rovings of wool in different colors, batting to kind of get started with 3-dimensional figures, 3 felting needles, a mat to work on, a little pamphlet, which is important even though there are 2 online tutorials that come with it. I understand, especially in this time, the need to step away from the screen and still want to work and learn. So to have that pamphlet and not have to watch me do it via phone or laptop, but kind of be able to get the gist of the process and learn a little bit about it without having to rely on technology. That was really important. And then, of course, the 2 online tutorials. This kit coming out this year has been such a milestone for myself and D for Dolls, and I'm just super proud of the product that I have produced. And I love when people send me things that they've made and they're sharing the toolbox. Even though this pandemic has brought a lot of ugliness to our worlds, I am pretty thankful for the time to pause and think through things that I've been wanting to kind of put into action. I think in a way the pandemic gave me that. Even though I still call myself a painter at heart, these little ladies, my little dolls, they have certainly encouraged me to think about wool and sculpture outside of how they exist, and thinking about performance and how the wool can be worn and engaged and activated through the body, and thinking about installation. I think with painting, I got to a point where I understood how to paint people very well, and wool challenges me and encourages me to think about all the ways that these new figures in a three-dimensional form can exist in the world. Thinking of where these masked women can perform and engage with the ground that they are telling stories on, and it allows me to think of the history of those places and how they're specific to our bodies as Black people, and wanting to continue to explore that in a performative aspect, while also being very much interested in these life-size figures and the stories that they tell and the way they take up space within our space. And I think that's a beautiful thing that sculpture in a larger scale gets to do. And I have so many ideas on how I can continue to work in that format. So I'm super excited for the months to come, the years to come, and to see how I continue to look beyond wool.